question, just raise your hand. I prefer to hear from you because the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. I'd rather you go away with what you want to know than go away thinking, I don't know, I should have asked that. Anyway, starting at the beginning, your basic flogger, which is a handle with a bunch of leather hanging off the end of it. Doesn't have to be leather, but my preference is for leather because it is the best material for a flogger. I've tried many, many other things, including the vegan alternatives, and unfortunately they don't last very long and some of them can cut quite badly, which is not really what you want to achieve during the scene. Now, I've got a great big bag here of different types of leather. Now, feel free to come and have a grope of this. Because I always say when people are choosing a flogger, to feel the leather. The amount of times that people do mail order and they get the flogger home and there's a lot of excitement, and I open the box expecting this wonderful flogger and something like that. That was my first flogger. It's really sweet, it's not going to do an awful lot, but in the picture it looked fantastic and I thought, wow. So there is always a case of buyer beware when you're going and buying a flogger online, because the photos might look fantastic and you might wind up with something like that. So it's usually good to talk to the makers. Most of the makers here will know exactly where all the materials come from. I can trace them, my cowhides back to the farm generally. Most of the leather I buy is from the EU, where there is a decent level of respect and care for the livestock. Some people don't. Leather that comes from the Far East might not be cow, might not be pig, it could be some other animal that you wouldn't want in a flogger necessarily, but that is each to their own. Now, construction-wise, going back to the typical flogger is a handle and a bunch of leather hanging off of it, but there are hinged floggers which will have a bit of a hinge in the middle, which means that the weight distribution is slightly more towards the front and can feel a bit difficult when you're swinging it. And then there's the poi floggers, which are usually a couple of loops between your fingers, a chain, and the bunch of leather hanging off of the end of it, and there's more of that kind of movement. I typically make handle floggers for the simple reason they're great to start with and they can take you all the way through your flogging journey and your kink journey. The question I get asked quite a lot is, are your floggers balanced? Now, balance being what it is, any thing of a length, there will be a balance point on it. The question that the user of a flogger needs to ask themselves is, where do I like the balance point? Do I like it further back or do I like it further forward? So when you are flogging, are you driving the flogger or is the flogger pulling you? So any user needs to figure out for themselves where they like the balance point, which is another reason I say to people, don't buy mail order. You need to come and test maybe 5, 6, 10 different floggers and find the one that feels good in your hand, that feels good for when you're throwing. Because each individual will have different restrictions of how they throw. I have a regular customer who's had a stroke, and he has a very, very significant impairment into his arm, but he throws a specific way, so we design around what he needs, which is a very short flogger that he throws backhand, and he can only throw that amount. So we build with him in mind. And that is the thing, everyone is an individual, so picking up a mass-produced flogger is not going to be individual to you. It's going to be something that is fairly middle of the road. Might be great to start with, but as you move on to your journey and you become a bit more proficient, you will want something that fits you. That's talking about the top. But talking about the receiver, You want something that the receiver is going to either enjoy or hate. Don't know. Maybe a bit of both. But once again, it's talking to the person that you're with, that you're going to play with, and see what they like. So, why do we flog? Why do we flog? Anyone?
As a preference to something else.
Yeah, why do you flog? Why would you pick up a flogger and hit someone with it, or be hit with it?
Usually for the weight that
The weight of it.
feels very different.
Yeah.
Sound,
The sound.
the way it spreads out.
Yeah.
And the sheer variation in the types of flogging.
Absolutely. You can flog as a journey from lightweight sensual sensation to a deep tissue massage to something that's going to strip the skin off of you. And there's also the mental side of it, the dominance, that I have got something powerful in my hand that can bounce you across the room. It can make you feel very strong and very powerful. And equally, from the receiving point of view, you can feel very powerless as a very heavy flogger is pounding into you and thrusting the breath out of you. It can be quite a profound experience from both sides. So going into a scene, it's worth mentally preparing yourself as a top or as a bottom. And we're going to talk a little bit about preparation for a scene. And I'd like to welcome Miss Sebi here, who is going to be my demo person. Okay? You might have known Zebby, she's one of the land crew here and has been for quite a long time now, so a familiar face around the place. Now, we were talking a bit earlier about preparation for a scene. Now, most people will play with somebody that they know. So you don't tend to negotiate quite so much when you're playing with somebody you know. And Zebby here brought up some really important points. Would you like to?
So something we were talking about is a year ago, I started playing with someone who was my friend, who I had been friends with for about 3 years. He knew me very, very well. He knew I have health problems. And then when it suddenly comes to playing together, it was, oh, I don't actually know you at all. Because all he knew was the blanket, I have health problems. He didn't know what they were. And in becoming my play partner, he needed to know what they were and how they affected him. It's more about how they affect you than the details of what the health issues are. So I have one of my many, many problems. I have an issue with a nerve right here. And as you can see, that's quite near to the thumb zone. So you have to be careful about that, and that's something that came up in our negotiation. And then for the first time we played together, my friend knew my body a bit better. She knew where my problems were. So together we got a Sharpie and we drew a box, and it was, this is a no-go box. We even got someone to draw a pretty picture inside it to make it fun because it was my birthday, so why not? But that was a fantastic indicator for him. He didn't need to think, oh, I know it's that area somewhere. He had a really obvious, clear box of where not to go. And with negotiating, even when you're in a long-term dynamic, which that ended up becoming, you meet people with chronic health issues. They vary from day to day, and especially with chronic pain, you often just power on through it, and you don't realise half of the time what bits hurt and where. And if you go into a scene and you've been ignoring the fact that your knee hurts and that your back hurts, you go over a bench and then suddenly you're putting pressure on this knee, and you might have to safe ride out of that scene far too quickly because you've not communicated to your top what's going on with your body that day. Now, There can be the ones that are more obvious, like I said about that spot on my back, that's always going to be the same. But day to day, so it's something to consider in your negotiations, especially when you're first starting out with someone. If you're a top, just say, do you have any health issues? Do you have any bad back, bad arm? Discuss it. And also, if you're a bottom, please remember to say it. And it is difficult to talk about sometimes because it can be personal, being health related. But if you talk about it first, if you talk about ways of mitigating it, with that spot on my back, to go back to that, I have Sean from Leather Delights making me a belt, which will provide padding, but also an obvious marker. Any stray hits. Actually, this lovely lady that inspired it, because we bought a huge, gorgeous red flogger from you, used it once and realised that it sprayed, and there was no way of avoiding that spot. So by having that protection, so you've got to think outside the box sometimes, but just communicate.
Now, there kind of is, but this is something I was going to come to a bit later, but I'll go into now. If you wouldn't mind just standing away from me. Now, I was teaching somebody who was visually impaired how to flog. Anyone can flog. Don't care what your abilities or disabilities are. There are ways around it, but you've got to think about it. This gentleman wanted to flog. He was a dominant person and he had visual impairment. So what we decided to do, it's okay to touch it, yeah? Was he placed his hand there. Therefore, he could strike. He had a guide of where to strike because his hand was touching the person. We made a short enough flogger so that we knew how much of the flogger was going to hit the person. And so the area, and in this case, Evie's case, the area that needs to be avoided is under my hand. That's not going to be struck. I can hit here and I can hit here. And turning round, I can use my other hand and do the same thing. And I've got my back to the audience. That's good.
If you want to turn around to people on that side, you can.
Oh yes. So imagine putting your hand. This is the area, so you can hit here and you can hit here without striking the area that really doesn't need to be struck. But your idea with the belt is definitely good. And then let's see where we are going. Now, there's some people that say you can flog everywhere. No, you don't want to flog somebody's face. No. And I was once in a session, somebody was using a very heavy flogger on my back. And I noticed every time it got high, the air burst was actually making my ears ring. And I was thinking, I'm going to pop an eardrum here. There was so much air pressure going into my ears, I couldn't enjoy the session because my ears started ringing. I ended up using earplugs and guarding my face. And they said, well, what was wrong? I said, the flogger was so big, the air that it was displacing was causing me issues. So you've got to think about a little bit what you're using and where, and what impact it can have on the other person. Now, the general places to flog, lovely, all around the shoulder blades, absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, the buttocks, that's classic. Some people like the backs of the thighs, some people hate it. Some people hate it but love it at the same time. That's always one to negotiate. Yeah, that's always one to negotiate. And there's of course the wraparound, where you take your flogger and rather than just bashing away at the buttocks and the thighs, you get to take a step forward and allow it to come forward. Because as it goes around the corner, it hits the hip, it starts exponentially speeding up, so by the time the ends land, they're going a damn sight faster than you threw it.
Especially when you've got chunky hips like that.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Oh, you like it?
I do.
Oh, I hate it. There you go.
See, we were saying each to their own, everyone has preferences.
Absolutely. So another one which can be a little bit contentious is flogging boobs. When can you not flog boobs?
And they got nipple piercings in them.
Good. What else?
But you can, you just got to make sure you don't pull them out.
Well, you can ask them to take the piercing out and then
Or put some tape over it.
put some tape over it. Oh, yeah, that can kind of roll down. It's good gaffer tape. Because then you have the additional pulling off the gaffer tape.
Clean film.
When else can you not flog boobs?
I'd be careful if they're augmented.
Good. Why?
I don't think augmentated breasts were meant to be flogged, so they never tested them.
Absolutely. Breast implants cost on average about £8,000. If you rupture an implant, be prepared to fork out £8,000 to have that baby replaced. That's not going to be much fun. Lactation. When you are lactating, if you cause trauma to the breast, a lactating breast, that can cause infection, trauma, and also loss of the ability to lactate. That can be really painful, very, very unpleasant. So if somebody's lactating, just avoid trauma to that kind of area.
So apart from the nipple, does anything else apply to men? Because of the pectoral muscle.
Pectoral muscle, not so much. If somebody has a heart problem, avoid the whole chest area, especially if they've got an electrical problem where they tend to need defibrillation to get the heart back into rhythm. I would avoid impact on that quadrant of the torso and electroplate because, heck, sometimes play is less important than living.
Post-op surgery, probably give it a little break.
Oh yeah. If you've had surgery, I would wait until you get clearance from your doctor, especially if you have bleeding problems. I know they say go back to sport after about 6 weeks, but I would give it a bit longer than that and make sure there is no post-operative bleeding and complications. I realise that removal of breast tissue is going to be quite different as well, but potentially long-term less problematic than augmentation, where if that splits, then you've got quite a lot of problems, whether you've got silicone which can leak into the body. Saline's not quite so bad, but you're still going to wind up with a deflated puppy.
And a bill.
And a big bill. Yeah, which is not good. We don't like that. So
you're only saying be careful and be aware, not
I-
stop, or you're saying don't.
I wouldn't, to be honest, no, because the risks outweigh the benefits, to be honest. And that's something with any play that you've got to think about. Does the risk outweigh the benefit? Is the fun going to be so great that we're going to risk £8,000 on having a new boob? It's going to have to be a bloody good scene. Sorry, good scene for that. So, we're going to talk about building a scene. I'm going to negotiate with you. Okay. So, if we're going to do a flogging scene, you as the bottom, what do you expect?
Something I like, what we were saying earlier, is where I do have the chronic pain. I find choosing the pain and choosing the type of pain that I receive actually helps me with my chronic pain, and having that nice pain helps process. So that's always something I'm going to be looking to get out of the scene, is having that good feeling afterwards.
What do you class as nice pain?
Wow. This
is where we could start.
And this is where we start looking at floggers.
Okay. So here we have a archetypal funny flogger. which has got nice wide soft balls. Here we've got an archetypal stingy flogger, which has very hard, very narrow, very dicky balls.
And I will always go straight towards something like this and love, love, love. This I usually stay away from because it can over-sensitize the nerves with my nerve issues, and that kind of flogger that can make a scene go from "this is amazing" to jumping up, screaming, and running away because I'm in so much pain out of nowhere. So, but hey, so that's a no for me. But
So if I was being sadistic, I'd just wave it around your head.
oh, there's many more things you can do with that are making the reaction.
Now, there was a time I was playing with somebody and they were having a lot of issues in their life, and this is another one a lot of people say, never flog when you're angry, never flog when you're over emotional, never. Actually, I made them this. Have a feel. Oh, you could hit somebody all day with that and they'll be there yawning. It is the softest, lightest, most ridiculous, almost like chamois leather, you know, the stuff that you wipe your car with. If anyone wants to have a feel, there we go.
But with that, doesn't mean that it flies behind you a lot and spreads out.
It's next there. It's like butter. Over there.
Does it also depend on how you're flogging? Because if you flick, you're going to feel a flick with that.
You'll
more
feel a
so
flick.
than a thud.
Come and have a feel of this. You're not going to feel a hell of a lot.
Flog with the tissues.
It pretty much is. The worst thing is to get a handle. Very interesting. Now, this person flogged me for an hour and a half straight. Fell on the floor in a puddle of sweat. And I was there saying, please, can I have some more? Here we go. Have a feel.
A few people commented on the handle that
Soft. Nobody's going to hurt. Oh, you want to? Do you want to take this around? Yeah. I'll carry on talking. You see, so there is, but from my perspective as a maker, there is a flogger for every single purpose. And if somebody needs to get their energy out and their anger out, then I will quite happily pass them that and sit there yawning while they work their socks off into you know. At the end of the day, I'm going to get kind of flogged and
let me say
kind of flogged. It's not exactly a big.
you're enabling them.
Yeah, I'm enabling them. I mean, you know. There's some. This is kind of fun. They're looped around at the end there, and it's rather fun because you get a rather a different sensation. Now, the thing I found, if you have a big heavy flog with nice long flogs, to make it even heavier, loop it again. And then you have an even heavier flogger, and it's so much more.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I'm asked quite often is how do I fit a flogger to my body? Now, you just hold that. Let your hand drop. In an ideal world, and I'm going to say ideal world, and you're a reasonably competent flogger, should come down to about your ankle bone. However, chandeliers exist, ceiling lights exist, low ceilings exist, people around you playing exist,
Camera tripods.
camera tripods exist. So, in the real world, when you're buying a flogger, think about where you're going to be flogging. The amount of times I've taken out ceiling lights is just not fun.
I caught catwalks on the back step.
Wow! I've had a scene once where I ended up hitting two people at the same time, the person on the back swing. And it was only halfway through that I realised I was absolutely beating the hell out of the person on the backswing, and his dom was wetting herself laughing because I was giving as much of a beating to him as I was to the person that I was supposed to be beating. So think about the environment that you're going to be working in when you're choosing your flogger. And most people will come away with something about that length, which is absolutely ideal. However, if you've got all the space in the world, then you're going to pick up something like this and have an awful lot of fun with it. Because the length, you're going to get a lot more velocity in the swing. And there's not really enough room in here to do much swinging, so I'm not
I have
going.
swung a cat, so use that phrase.
You've swung a cat.
I caught one up on the back foot. I went backwards, like your friend was behind. The cat was behind, decided he wanted to play on the floor.
I've got to admit, when I was mucking around with my whip at home, my cat thought it was the best thing in the world. But yeah.
Quick question about the handle. You've
Yes.
spoken a lot about the different types of leather, but I noticed the first soft one had a bent handle.
Yes.
What impact does that have? The shape of the handle?
It's really down to the individual. Going back to when I used to play tennis, I used to go and get fitted for a tennis racket handle. So they put your hand in and you put the grip like that, and you're supposed to be able to put your thumb between your fingers and the palm of your hand there, which allows you to be able to swing the racket properly and not get RSI in the hands. So really, that was just another grip that was a different width in the palm of your hand. And when I'm making the wooden handles, I tend to make a variety of widths to make sure that anyone of any different hand size can get a decent grip. It's a good idea if you are a top, actually, to go into a sports shop and get fitted for a tennis racket. Don't say why, and I know not every one of us here is tennis fit, but it's a good idea because then you will know exactly how big a circumference of a handle that you should have that is not going to give you RSI if you flog a lot.
That's next Saturday sorted.
I don't think Sports Direct do it anymore. But RSI is a very real thing, and injuries relating to flogging from the top's perspective is a very real thing. You can harm yourself, you can harm your shoulder, your wrist, your elbow, the same way as you would if you were playing tennis. It is an impact sport. So the care of the top, honestly, the care of the top matters as much as the care of the bottom. If you want to be a proficient top, you've got to make sure that you have the right tools for you to be a proficient top.
Did you say an hour and a half the last time you did that with a really soft one?
Yeah.
That's going to create some serious blisters. If you don't do it right.
If you don't do it right, but once again, it was somebody I've designed it for. So with that, well, what did I do with that one? Yeah. With these ones, you can hold it in two ways. You can either hold it as a traditional handle or you can put it between your fingers. So you can change things up a bit, and you also wrap something around it if it's not too big. So they're kind of handy in that respect. But I've had to stop bringing these in. They used to come from America, and since custom fees got added, they started getting to be like nearly £100 for a handle. So unless you're prepared to pay the big bucks for these ones, I tend to go for those ones now, or the wooden ones, which are made. You know, it's a personal thing, and that is the thing with flogging. It is a personal thing. I'm not going to tell you that you're swinging a flogger wrong, because everyone has got their own way of doing it. But if you're swinging it dangerously, I might come and point it out. I was going to say something and I completely got it out of my mind now.
Talk about swinging dangerous.
Swinging dangerously, yes. So swinging that is going to cause injury to the person that you're working with. So there's certain areas you want to avoid. The big one that most people talk about is the kidneys. They're tucked nicely up under your rib cage here. Kidneys are about there. I wouldn't necessarily flog over the spine, and I wouldn't flog over the area where there is only the spine and no ribs heavily. You can tap, but I wouldn't flog it. I wouldn't do anything heavy there because your back's not very well supported there. There's that area.
And if you catch your coccyx,
Oh, if you catch your coccyx, be prepared to be sworn at. What?
he wrote that very creative. I'm not speaking from experience. But,
Oh, sorry, I can go back to a session that I was having where I stood up in the middle of it and went, buttock, coccyx, buttock. Yes, the coccyx hurts and can continue to hurt for quite some time afterwards. It's never a good thing. So, have we got any questions?
What part of the tassels are you aiming to strike with?
Good question. Okay, so if we're aiming above, we're aiming probably about there. So the end part of the tassel is probably the end third. And they want to hit nice and square on the bum or on the back without travelling around too much. What we don't want to do unless your bottom or your sub has specifically said that they're okay with it, we don't want to wrap around. It's not a very nice experience, especially if the person is new to it, because the pain is quite a lot more and it can mark. Marks. Some people mark, some people don't. The best way of marking, I found, was if that area was bound first.
Changes the blood flow.
It changes the blood flow, and if the blood flow is slower, then you tend to mark up a little bit more. I never mark. You can hit me with a 2x4. I don't know.
one thing I find that works for me if I want to achieve marks is doing 2 shorter sessions and having a gap in between. So, and that changes the sensations as well. Because if you've had an hour and a half break, those bruises, those welts are starting to come up. You've lost that nice warm, fuzzy feeling from it. You've now just got the stinging feeling left behind. And when you go and play on that and start hitting that again for a second time, the sensation is totally different. You can use the exact same floggers, but because your skin is now really sensitive and starting to bruise, it changes the scene again completely. And then I find that doing it in the 2 sessions with the break in the middle, that causes me to mark more.
And also, this, the endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine have all left the building.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing, if somebody has happened to take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which can thin the blood, I actually refused to flog somebody who, just as we were getting into the scene, suddenly declared that they were on warfarin. So going back to negotiations, you really want to have a thorough negotiation, especially if the person is somebody that you've never played with before. And it starts off pretty much with, how are you? How are you today? That's a bit sore.
Yeah, I think we won't be doing anything on the back today.
Okay. But have you eaten today?
Not recently enough to be playing.
Yeah. So there's another one. Because when you're playing, your partner, your bottom, yourself, can get a bit lightheaded from play. And what you don't want is halfway through them passing out through low blood sugar, because the pain gets too much and their blood sugar comes down and they suddenly go wobbly. So that is another one to bear in mind. Has your partner eaten?
Also, have they eaten too much? because having a flogging scene on the tummy, don't recommend it.
Have you been to the toilet? I have. Jolly good. Because having a flogging scene when somebody has a full bladder and the impact is bouncing them up and down can have interesting effects. And if you're not into pee play, it's really a good idea to make sure that person has been to the loo first.
Having so much fun they lose bladder control.
Well, there is that too. So that is another part of the negotiation. Another one to check. Am I okay to hit you? And specifically name the places that you intend to hit. Make sure that that person is aware that they are going to be hitting those places. And also, is it okay to touch you with my hands? Because there is a very different demarcation between being hit with an implement and somebody touching you. And it can be quite personal, it can be quite triggering for somebody who's been through trauma to be touched by somebody that they don't know too well, that they may have just negotiated an impact scene with and have wound up being touched. And it might be that, oh, that's a nice red back. And you reach out and touch, and that person freezes, and from that moment onwards, the lovely bubble, the lovely energy that we built between you is suddenly gone because there is suddenly an area of non-trust there and shock.
Also, the different types on different places. So this one you could use on me all over. You could use on my back quite happily, but I have quite a sensitive back. So this one I would not like on my back at all. So it's not just negotiating where, it's negotiating with what. You lay out your toys and you say, okay, these ones are fine for these areas. Again, there's other ones that I would prefer or dislike across my chest as well. So I would say I like these things on the buttocks, I like these other things on the boobs, I like these other things on my back. These ones can go anywhere. These ones are a big no-no. You know, it's also the different types of toys.
And you know what? It's not ratting for a bottom for a sub to say what they want to be hit with. It's called play. It's supposed to be enjoyable for both of you, for everyone. And if you're causing that person pain and they don't want to have pain, they haven't consented to pain, then it's not play, it's abuse. And it's drawing that fine line, saying we're going to do something that we both enjoy, that we're both going to come away with something good from, or to, I'm just going to beat you for the sake of beating you. And we don't want that. That's not what BDSM is about. We're all going to go away and have a lot of fun, and we're going to explore each other's sensitivities and the whole sensory world, universe that can be done with flogging. And you're taking somebody on a journey through different sensations, and some of it might be pain, some of it might be quite pleasurable, some of it might feel like a massage. But we're taking each other on a journey where, as a top, you're seeing that person relax and fall deeper into the world that you're building for them. And sometimes that world can be quite profound. Has anyone heard of subspace? Yep, great. I'm glad that you are all aware of it. Now that can be very profound in itself. It's almost like an altered reality, an altered state of consciousness. And keeping that person in that beautiful, happy, lovely, warm bubble is actually quite a privilege. And you're taking somebody through a very vulnerable stage into this lovely place. And if you, as a top, do the wrong thing, they can come crashing out of it very hard. So it's something that you have to bear in mind, that you're keeping them in that place and bringing them out kindly. Otherwise, the mental drop that happens afterwards can be quite catastrophic. So watching the person that you're playing with and watching them as they go through various phases of relaxation. And when I'm playing with somebody who's new to this, I never let them go deep because they don't know what to expect. And if you haven't talked them through what to expect, it's not quite a good thing to take them to that place because you don't know that you're going to be able to support them coming out of it adequately. Some people, as they're coming around, like to have blankets, cuddles, sweet drinks, teddies.
Yep. You're just naming my perfect aftercare right now.
Yeah. And some people like to be put in the corner with a blanket over their head and left alone. And do not talk to them, do not touch them, do not address them until they're ready to come round. But it is finding out through experience what every individual needs as they come out of that space. Tops also go into a different headspace, and tops also need aftercare after they've had their scene. And it might be as little as a hug and a thank you. It might be sit down and have a drink and rehydrate and something to eat because they've just done a fair amount of exertion. But if you're a bottom and you're playing pick-up play with a top, ask them what they need after a scene as well. They might just say a thank you is enough, and they might say a drink would be nice. They might say a hug would be nice, but it's finding out what each other needs after a scene. I don't personally like the culture of almost conveyor belt type play, where have a nice scene with somebody, move on, do the same thing again with somebody else, move on, because to me, nobody is getting their emotional needs met. You're getting a physical need met, but there is way more to impact play, to flogging, than just being beating and being beaten.
And it's not just the immediate post-scene aftercare as well, it's setting out a plan of what contact do you need afterwards. Are you the kind of person that needs phone calls? Do you need texts? Do you need daily check-ins? When you know yourself more and you know how you drop as a sub or a bottom, then you'll be able to say, actually, for me, it's 2 days after. I'm fine the day after, and then halfway through the day, on the second day after, I will go down hard. And that is when I need contact. And if it's pick-up play, then maybe you don't have the relationship with your top to have that. So you then have a friend who you've discussed it with, they know you, they know what you need. Just keep in contact, but make sure you discuss what those needs are. As a top and a bottom, you both need to not feel afraid, just straight up say during your negotiation, I need these things as part of my aftercare, whichever side you're on. Because, like Daisy was saying, even the tops need some kind of aftercare, even if it's just thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A good friend of mine went to Darklands and pretty much conveyor belt whipped a dozen people, and the mental crash that he had 2 days after was absolutely ridiculous, and I was left picking up the pieces for him because the play had gone, the people had gone, the scene was over, and he was an absolute mess. So when you're getting into anything, just think about what you need after it, what you need before it, what you need after it, whether, make sure you have a nice meal after it as well, balance yourself. It's looking after your body, it's looking after you, it's looking after the person that you're with. So, have we got any questions?
How would you feel about when you're starting to play with someone new about gauging kind of because each person hits differently, right?
Yeah.
The force of hit as you go to suggest almost like a try or or like?
Absolutely. If I was starting to play with somebody new, I'll start off with soft flogger because we're going to start and we're going to see what the person likes. So get them comfortable, maybe a spanking bench, something like that. Start gently. We'll talk through, I'll show you what's in my bag. I'll say her. Then let them have a feel. And I've got, as I say, I've got a bag of leather there. So most of my floggers are somewhere built from something along these lines. So please do have a look at that. Let them choose what they want to feel. And we'll start off soft. And I'll probably flog for about 5 minutes and say, do you want me to go harder? Yes. Do you want me to try on your back? No. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit harder on your bum. Both cheeks, and we'll move around them a little bit to make sure that we're not getting the same spot over and over again, because that is horrible, being flogged in the same spot over and over and over and over and over again. I've seen that many times. And then, if it's a first play, don't use traffic light system, I don't use safe words, I use clear and open communication, and I want them to ask questions, answer questions, tell me what they're feeling and tell me what they want. If they start getting past the point of being able to communicate, I stop. I know that they're enjoying it, but we can go into that place tomorrow or the next time or the next time or the next time. But for the first time, I want them just to enjoy that situation, enjoy the experience, and figure out the beginnings of some limits.
How regularly do you do these checks? Like as in like
Fairly regularly, and I will also watch their body. You can tell a lot from what people's hands are doing, from the tension that's in their shoulders to how they relax down onto the spanking bench. Body language accounts for an awful lot. You can see micro twitches. You've got to really concentrate on that person, and if somebody's trying to talk to you, just tell them you're watching every single bit of their body language. If you hit and they're twitching, immediately check and say, is there pain?
Also, if you're a bottom and you know you have certain reactions, so for me, I curl my toes. If things are getting a bit too much, you will see my toes curl up and start twitching. So that's something I know, that's about myself, and I can tell my top that in the negotiations. So they don't have to guess or work out, okay, that's a fairly obvious one. But
So you're not very soft.
but that's something that I know about myself that I can communicate. The more, for both sides, the more you know about yourself and then can pass along, it makes the communication so much better, it makes the negotiations more detailed, and it means you have more fun quicker because you have been open and honest and got things going. And then
I say typically, when somebody's beginning to show pain or stress, the first things that go are either the shoulders or the hands. And you can see somebody's shoulders suddenly come up a little bit, or their hands with fist. I say, okay, they're not comfortable. They've lost that nice relaxation place that we had. So you can back off a little bit. It's always okay to back off. It's always okay to check in and make sure that that person is okay and in a good space. And what you don't want, especially for a new person, is that they're being flogged through gritted teeth because I've got to do this to please the person who's flogging me. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're on your own personal journey here. You're doing this for fun. This is play. Always keep that in your head. This is play. Unless you are in a relationship where you have given full power to your top, a CNC type relationship, which takes a lot of time, a lot of negotiation, a lot of getting to know people. This is play. This is about you as an individual enjoying yourself. And if it's not fun, then you need to do something different.
Does everyone know what CNC means? Consecutive.
Bendy.
Yes, bendy.
Yes.
Bendy. Do you want
Do
to?
you want me to?
Yes.
So
Yes.
bendy. Oh, bendy.
I thought you said bendy, and I'm thinking, who's he?
No, so we touched on my health issues. One of them is EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or easier related to that is hypermobility, which you've probably more likely heard of.
Double jointed.
So, my joints don't like to stay where they should be a lot of the time, and that can be fun during play. I've had it before where having a paddle and suddenly my hip has sublux, which is a partial dislocation. I know how to deal with this. I can stop, I can put it back in. I've been doing this my whole life. I'm quite practiced. I don't need a hospital unless it's a severe actual dislocation. I can deal with it myself. But I came across one situation where I was restrained like this. And I had been winched up slightly too far and both shoulders subluxed at once. Meaning I couldn't put them back in myself because I had two non-working, very painful arms. And me and my top didn't know each other too well at the time. And I was having to direct him how to bash it back in. No, not like that. No, to the left. Oh. Yeah. Not great. So again, with the negotiation, think about things like that. If that is something that is an issue, don't reach the arms up too high. Be careful of positioning of things. Sometimes if you know that you're prone to something like a subluxing and you're over a hard bench, then having a rolled up towel or a blanket there to give that cushioned impact so that when it comes into you, you're not slamming straight into the bench onto your hip. You've got more of a padding there. Be creative. You know, some of the ways that I have dealt with things and my health issues and how I've got around them have been really weird, but they've worked. So be creative. Don't be afraid to try things. And
Yeah, absolutely. Try different tools, different floggers, different ways of flogging. Because at the end of the day, just because you have one flogger that you've bought, it doesn't mean it's the right flogger. Yeah, absolutely. So, any other questions?
Hi, do you have any advice as to bottoms who may have like neurodivergence and are not really good at identifying how much pain they're actually experiencing?
Good question, actually. Once again, if the top is an experienced top, they will read your body fairly well, even if you're not verbal. And there comes a point where most subs will become non-verbal. So it is down to reading. However, if you can get to the point where you have some non-verbal signals, I get to a point where I can't communicate anymore, and I will just put my hand up like that, and that means that's a red for me. That's enough, especially if I start doing that. That is definitely red. Go away! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! So you could, if you can think about what works for you, maybe do something like, that's enough. I don't want to go any harder than that. I'm okay, just, and then that is a stop, maybe. And that's okay. If you go non-verbal. The other one that I used to do is, you know those cat toys, that a little rubber ball that lights up when you bounce it? If you've got one of those in your hand and you just drop it so it lights up, then you've got a very visual signal that something's not quite right, and it's asking the top to check in with you. I would, being neurodivergent, let the top know before you start playing and ask them to check in with you regularly. and make sure that they are checking in with you, and feel confident in calling a stop if they are not checking in enough to know where you're at.
Also with the non-verbal ones, with the I use the light up door.
You do.
But a nice one for littles is the little baby rattles, the soft ones, the small ones.
Oh yeah.
You can put your fingers through the hole and you're hanging on to it, and then if you've got an issue, you can just shake your hand. So, you know, there's various different ones depending on. Some people use bells as well.
Yeah.
Again, so you can shake it or drop it. Anything that will make a noise or will light up or give some kind of signal when you can't speak.
Yeah. Anyone else?
One question. Communication when they go into subspace.
Yes.
I mean, I've had situations where you're looking at the person and they seem active, and then suddenly they just gone to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And this, if you're doing rope, it is like, oh, have they fainted or have they gone into subspace? And I haven't got round to working out the difference between one and the other.
Okay. Even in the deepest subspace, hold out your hands.
A little touch.
Little double squeeze and just say to the person, if you feel that, just respond back. And even the tiniest twitch, the deepest subspace, you can still manage the tiniest twitch.
Okay.
One twitch, two twitches, you can sort out.
Because we're constantly on rope work, touching the person to feel through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the twitch, the hand response, is a conscious response. And even when you are deep, deep, deep in that place, it's not going to bring them out of it enough to have that head crash. But it's enough to say, I'm okay, I'm okay. And if you've talked to them beforehand and know what they want when they're in that space, whether they've said keep going or actually back off and just throw a blanket over me, and you know, it's hopefully that person has been to subspace before and knows what they need.
Yeah, because when they first go into subspace, they sort of come and go, oh, like,
Yeah. That is the beware point where they don't know, and it happens, and it takes them a bit unaware that they've been on that.
or you say something to them, they go, oh, what?
Yeah, because coming out of it very fast is like a brain crash. It's not fun. So anyone else? No? Ooh, right, okay. So we are, oh blimey, it is that time anyway. I'm Daisy. Next month is the LAMvs, so if anyone would like to vote for me as the LAMv Trader of the Month, that would be absolutely awesome. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you've taken something away with you today. I know an hour is never quite enough to get everything out there, but I hope we've touched on a lot of subjects that you'll be able to take something away with. Thank you very, very much.